Welcome to Story Comic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 501. I'm your host, Barney Smith of StoryComic.com, and we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed and celebrated Vermont author, I.M. Aiken.
Internationally acclaimed?
Yeah, see?
I did publish a story about Quebec this winter.
See?
So there you go.
There you go.
Quebec City. Had a lovely trip up there.
It's technically true. See, everything I say here is technically true. So,
and I do incorporate a lot of my former travels for Uncle in my writing. It's
okay.
there.
Yeah.
So, I probably have 2 or 3 people that read me overseas.
And you have a lot of you put out a few books, but now you're here to talk a little bit about Stolen Mountain, which is a Trowbridge, Vermont story. So fascinating. There it is. Look at that, huh?
This is this year's book.
Okay.
This year meaning fall of 2025.
Right.
And I failed to market it. And I was really looking forward to marketing this book. It was my great plan to travel Vermont north to south, marketing this very specific book to my neighbors, because it's about a pair of fraud cases that happened in Vermont that I borrowed liberally from. The 2 fraud cases involved Haystack Mountain down near Mount Snow in Dover, Wilmington area. And then I was looking over at Jay Peak and Burke Mountain with those fraud cases. They were unrelated in a criminal statute fashion, but they coincided with each other. And that was the mountain that got stolen, was the southern version of that story. But on October 11th, I fell off a barn I was building.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I spent 11 days in the hospital, and I've had 5 separate procedures on my wrists, and I shattered my wrists. So instead of being out marketing my book, I was either in hospital or at home in a dark room recovering with a TBI and absolutely destroyed hands.
Wow.
So I never got to just do my endless drives up and down 100 and to all the cool places that I've been in this state. And now that I'm well enough to do it, it's mud season. We're getting 2 to 5 inches of fresh snow today on top of the 4 feet we've already had here. So it just feels weird trying to now market a book 6 months after its release. And 6 months before the next book comes out.
The good news is, though, Christina, is that it's an evergreen book.
It is.
So that makes it easier. Yeah,
it is. So there was a guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but if anybody was reading the newspapers in southern Vermont, this guy was going to be the great economic hero of these southern counties in Vermont. He was going to bring in the billionaires and the millionaires. He was rehabbing an airport, and he bought a small private ski hill to turn it into one of these billionaire resorts with movie theaters and all sorts of nonsense. And he just made promises and got state tax relief, got local tax relief, got local grants, and then pulled famous tricks where he didn't pay the vendors, didn't do the thing, didn't follow up, left houses unfinished. And during the pandemic, while this project was falling apart, my niece and I raised my niece, we would drive through these abandoned construction sites and photograph them. Wow. And so part of this story involves that sort of adventure that my Rachel and I did. We're like, oh, let's go find these things, and took photographs of it. And then I tried to fictionalize it, strip out the facts, but it's recognizable because part of my interest isn't in the crime, but the people. I love telling stories about Vermont and the Vermont terrain and the Vermont people and our heritage and our history. Not that it's better or worse. It's just ours. It's just that thing that we have here as New Englanders. And weirdly, as I was trying to get to the end of this book, I got really frustrated with my bad guy. My bad guy was a real estate developer committing fraud, not paying his vendors, and the story suddenly seemed so similar, and the character seemed so similar to a well-known person in the United States. And I didn't want that to happen. I just didn't want that guy to be the guy on my page. I didn't want to I just didn't want to be there. And I'm like, So at some point I just sort of took the ending that I had planned and went for a long walk with it and just invented something crazy. And I laid in, if anybody wants to ping me later, there's some Easter eggs in there. I was deliberate in where I picked up some of these ideas. Just as a little puzzle teaser for some readers that would say, "Oh, I think I see something there." Yeah, this poor little book, Stolen Mountain, went through some really interesting troubles. I couldn't get any cover designer to do what I wanted, and the way of modern publishing is author gets refusal, and I was refusing, and I wasn't making myself popular. So this stupid drawing right here was me. I'm not an artist. And I'm like, all I'm trying to say is I just want a ski lift. But there's some very famous book cover designers, and one of the old rules is if you have the word mountain or apple on a title, you don't need to have a picture of a mountain. You don't need to put Katharine Hepburn's face on a book about Katharine Hepburn. You can either have the name or the face. And I'm like, no, we don't put a picture of a mountain on a book called Stolen Mountain. We do something else. And
I love the picture though. That's a great cover. Yeah.
Well, the first time it got seen, which was at the New England Independent Booksellers Association, I may even have that copy somewhere. It was dog poo. They said, "Oh, that looks homegrown. It looks, self-published," and it immediately went into redesign. The drawing stayed, but yeah. So it's been a challenging book, and just in the minutes before connecting with you, I got a lovely, lovely email from my publisher. Some Masters of Fine Arts students were assigned to read this book, and I got the question and answers from one of the students, and it was insightful and funny, and I'm like, oh, somebody read it. It's always a surprise when somebody reads one of my things. Yeah.
So I'm really curious, Christina, because it's called a Trowbridge, Vermont story.
Yes.
So it kind of insinuates that there's going to be more stories in Trowbridge, Vermont.
Well, this was novel number 1, called The Little Ambulance War of Winchester County. And this is fairly autobiographical, but not entirely. I was a young EMT in the city of Cambridge, Mass. During my university days.
Okay.
So roughly the first half of this book is being a young EMT in Metro Boston and just sort of the adventures and sadness that happens there. And then we were reintroduced to the main character after they start a rescue squad in Trowbridge, Vermont. And it's at that point that I start building characters in Trowbridge, Vermont. And I really didn't see what I was doing. I was simply building a place to land a novel. And I was inventing characters. And when it came down to trying to market the books, there were a lot of things that I just didn't know how to do. And there are some things that I detest doing. I don't like social media. I don't find scanning on a phone brings me any joy at all.
Right.
I don't get a lot of, I literally look at Instagram and go, what are they doing? And why is this in front of me? There may be something a little spicy in my brain. I acknowledge that. But I'm like, I don't want, sorry, all you book talk folks, but I want to go where the readers are.
Right.
And that was my question. Where do readers at? To badly quote Blazing Saddles, where do readers at? And I ended up over on Substack. And so to promote the writing, I'm like, well, I should write stories to keep feeding my audience. So I picked up various characters in my Trowbridge setting and used them to flush out characters and descriptions and settings. And so once a month for the last 2.5 years, I've been publishing a short story of about 10 to 20 minutes on Substack that I also record here. So those are also accidentally a podcast. So that podcast of short stories is called Trowbridge Dispatch. And I'm using the word dispatch as sort of a pun, either the idea of dispatch as a newspaper or my experience, which is some idiot on the other end of a microphone telling me to run toward the burning building.
Right.
Get yourself up and go. Yeah, boss. Got it. So Trowbridge, Vermont became the center of this little universe that I had built. So I now have terrain and people and places, and it allows me to have continuity between stories that don't actually have continuity.
Okay.
So these stories are not a series. Like this is not 1 and this is not 2. They exist independently, although the lead characters here in Stolen Mountain can be found sitting and getting drunk around a bonfire in the little ambulance war of Winchester County. So I picked up minor characters like Tom Stoppard did with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and I said, okay, you two are my new main characters, and I carried them forward. So that's where Trowbridge, Vermont came from, and it's very closely linked to where I live. Because I know this place. I served here as a medic, as an EMT, firefighter for a long time, and I worked on services, got paid on services nearby.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. The EMS Captain turned sleuth is Brighid Doran. Is that kind of about, is that inspired by you in a way?
Sure. Brighid is not me, but she seems to be the character that carries most of my narrative forward at this point. She was a minor character in the Little Ambulance War and is now seeming to be more of a dominant character. But I've never been a sleuth.
Yeah.
I just needed an avenue to tell this crazy story. And Brighid and her girlfriend, future partner, wife is named Sarah Ann Musgrave. And throughout the stories and the books, we see Sam at different points with the don't ask, don't tell laws in the DOD. And then her rank keeps changing. It advances, but depending on what story you're on, she's a colonel over here and a lieutenant over there, and who cares? So she's actually a young lieutenant in novel number 3. And at the end of Stolen Mountain, she's a lieutenant colonel. So that's why I say the stories aren't sequential. And
right. because it's a fiction story, how much research did you feel like you had to do because it's kind of inspired by real life events?
I'm surprised at how much research I've been doing. I spent a lot of time clipping articles in multiple newspapers, going to original sources. Okay. Damn it. I literally did a lot of the things that Brighid Doran, my main character, did do, including the photographic trips and trying to capture sort of that moment in time as this fraud was falling apart and being recognized as fraud.
Right.
Because I had been on the watching side as it developed, thinking that ain't right. That's not going to go the way people think it's going to go. So yeah, and book number 3, which is called Captain Henry. It's got a longer title than that, but that actually has 10 years worth of research in it. And that novel is really disturbing me this weekend. We finished the final rounds of editing a week ago. And it is now en route to the next phase, which is internal layouts, and getting what's called an advanced review copy prepared for the various shows and reviewers and stuff like that. The Captain Henry, which is the third novel, is called Captain Henry, 2.5 Insurrections, 2 Wars, 1.25 Centuries, and a Story of Love. The research that went into that really started with my own great-grandfather, who I discovered after my parents had died, was the first police chief of Springfield, Massachusetts, and bought the first ambulance in Springfield, Massachusetts, and had his patrol officers on pedal bikes and deployed telegraphs. And this was all prior to 1900.
Wow.
And, an hour and a half down the road from where I live right now is where that story unfolded. This ancestor, Henry, had worked at several of the munitions plants in and around Springfield in the late 1800s. He was a world champion marksman and was a firefighter. And the boys of Springfield, Massachusetts, ended up as the ground infantry force in Cuba during the Spanish-American War. And so you had this brigade from Massachusetts, all of the Buffalo Soldiers as cavalry, and Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. And that comprised the 13,000 American forces fighting in Cuba. And that war resulted in us getting control of Guantanamo Bay, Puerto Rico, Guam, Marinara Islands, the Philippines. And so I took those stories that I could find, because I could find, and my ancestor, Captain Henry, served in the U.S. Army, enlisting in 1869, 1870, and he was in the Reconstruction South as an American soldier, thumping heads of the KKK and other bad organizations, enforcing the new civil rights laws that had just been passed. So I'm researching these civil rights laws from the 1860s to 1875 that were touched on in school. But some of these laws were replicated in the 1960s. He was an enforcer for that as a young private and then a young corporal. And it is at this moment that Posse Comitatus is passed. And these soldiers are sent to the American West because the white Southerners had refound their political power and said, we don't want Yankee soldiers patrolling our streets. And so the then president shipped the soldiers west to go cause other troubles. The other part of this crazy story are my journals from my year in Iraq, edited, dressed up, and then done to create something other than just me ranting on paper. But I spent a year looking at and exploring the fact that while I was in Iraq, a civil war broke out that we weren't actually involved in. And most of the funding for that civil war came from Iran. And so in 90,000 words in this novel, I must have said, and we don't need to go to war against Iran, about 40 times. And I woke up this weekend going, I just wrote a book that says human beings have human rights and posse comitatus is a real law. And the civil rights laws we keep passing but don't enforce. And we really shouldn't be engaging in wars and cultures and places that we don't understand.
Right.
Most Americans don't know the difference between a Sunni and a Shia. And I find that odd to be in a situation where that's the thing I'm going to try to promote next. It's a crazy book about the weirdest part of American history when we're trying to repress human rights against the backdrop of me saying, please, let's not continue our proxy war against Iran, which is where Hezbollah and Hamas, it's all tied together.
Right.
So the 10 years of research there was just me doing genealogy and me saying, I wonder if there's a story here. And then it kind of popped out that, there's a story there.
Yeah.
I wrote the dedication for that story on the 6th of January, 1 year after that insurrection. And in the dedication, I listed the names of the police officers that had fallen on that day.
Wow.
Which was very hard to read for tape.
Right.
A lot of that book was hard to read for tape.
So Christina, what's next for you now? Is there, because you mentioned that you are working on another book.
I am. Digression. There's a cute line about Paul McCartney. He says, all I ever wrote was love songs. And Kevin Costner has said, the only thing I ever played were athletes. So I made my whole career out of playing an athlete. I recognize that it sounds like I'm writing crazy thriller, edge of the seat books that take place within wars. And I'm really writing about people and their relationships. And I recognize that I'm primarily writing love stories. And I'm not talking romance. I'm talking what it is to be in a relationship with somebody else, whether that is, in fact, a marriage-like relationship or something else. I was listening to one of your podcasts recently with a Vermont thriller mystery writer, and one of his lines was, in writing a mystery serial, the readers get more invested in the characters than the actual mystery. That's what I kind of recognized, is that the stories are really about the people and what they're doing. So the next story, it's called The Fundraiser. And it is a matchmaking event that takes place in rural Vermont where there is no connectivity. So there is no swipe left, swipe right. And there's a lovely guy in northern Vermont, Brandon, Vermont, who set up a payphone called Brantel. Anyway, I'm like, I'm going to put an American-style phone booth in Trowbridge. I'm also going to go get a UK red phone box, and I'm going to put up a blue mailbox. And I'm sort of having this rebellious moment against technology and thinking, well, I'm just going to have people come. I'm already writing it and just sort of meet. And whether it's more a sexy, lovey thing, or as most of them will turn out to be, just sort of friends, just deep friendships, and what it is to be part of a community and, sit around and say nothing to each other. And the challenge there is building tension. How do you, how do you do that? I sit on a panel near the end of this month talking about suspense and how to build suspense. And I'm like, but it's not a will she, won't she. It's more of like, this is the way people work.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Christine, if people want to learn more about you and your work,
yeah,
where's it? Could they go to your Substack, or where do you recommend they go?
Go to I am Aiken. Just go search either I.M. Aiken, AIKEN, or go to IamAiken.org or com, and you'll come to my Substack or other websites. Okay. I have two different Substacks. One is this crazy thing entitled Free Thoughts of a Writer Writing About Writing Freely. And one of my goals here was to make sure that I got banned or censored during the year. And regrettably or proudly, I achieved that.
Okay.
Last week, I learned that I was censored or prohibited from participating in some short story contests with well-known publishers. And I went through upset to pride in about 2 or 3 hours.
Congratulations.
Thanks. So pleased. Yeah. That's probably a topic for a different day. But let me address my crazy name.
Okay.
My name is Christina. That's what my mom called me. And my father was also a novelist, and my grandfather was a novelist on my father's side. And in the opening of one of my father's better known books is the phrase, what's your name? I am Fletcher, or Fletch, I am Fletcher. And what does the I am stand for? But he goes through this book going, I'm Fletcher, I'm Fletch, as a joke. So when I was looking for a pen name, I borrowed that concept from dear old daddy. Because I sort of decided I shouldn't publish under my given names. Aiken is my mother's name. Come by that one naturally. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Well, excellent. Well, I appreciate your time, Christina. And you're going to have to come back on when you get your next book published.
Well, or at any other time.
Yeah.
We can talk firefighting about your brothers, or EMS stuff, or we can talk about a short story. Some of the things, just for the audience to know, is I try to deal with the emotional and physical impact of being in public service for a career and what that does to your soul and to your body. I write about PTSD, but I never use the phrase PTSD or define it, but I try to give people very realistic understanding of the manifestations of that. And that is a dominant theme in my stories.
Right. Okay.
Nice. Well, you're a wonderful person to talk to. I love your smile. It's been a joy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Christine. And I'm excited to have you come back on again. This has been fantastic.
All right, then. Come find me at I Am Aiken. It's that easy.
Yes, certainly. All right.